If you want to raise a confident, friendly, just a well-balanced dog, it all starts from socialization in the puppy period. This is my big puppy Mochi. Socialization is super crucial when raising a puppy because socialization is essentially just the process of introducing your puppy to the world and ensuring that they don't get overwhelmed or scared of new things and rather learn to take new things as they come with confidence and navigate the world without, too much fear or uncertainty. And the reason we want to avoid these feelings of fear, uncertainty, and lack of confidence while they're still a puppy and growing is because these feelings are exactly what leads to reactivity, which is when dogs have disproportionate reactions to triggers and, as they get older, out of fear, out of not knowing, out of lack of confidence. So socialization just is the best thing you can do and what you really have to do to make sure your dog grows up and hopefully doesn't become reactive. Now, I will say socialization is not the only thing that controls whether your dog will become reactive or not. A lot of times, like with my dog here, Mochi, so well socialized, as I'll go over in this video on how to do that, but he was unfortunately attacked by a dog as a young dog, so he became super reactive towards certain dogs even to this day. And also genetics play a huge role. So again, taking my dog for an example, he's a border collie. So even though he was super socialized to things like bikes as a young puppy, he still had a period where he would chase them and bark them, and that's likely due to genetics, just like that herding instinct. So reactivity doesn't just come from lack of well socialization, but socialization is the one thing you can really control with your puppy and a huge factor in preventing reactivity and also just creating a well-balanced dog. So it's something you really want to focus on. In this video, I'll go over what socialization actually is because I think it's definitely a misunderstood concept. I'll also go over some critical concepts like the socialization window for a puppy, some examples of how you can socialize. I also want to go over what not to do when socializing a puppy, and I'll throw in some tips that you can easily implement from day one. So first and foremost, super briefly, what is socialization? So I kind of went over this in the beginning, but socialization is just the process of exposing your dog to different triggers and their environment. And it does include playing with other dogs, for example, or saying hi to people. But unlike what some people think, that is definitely not the bulk of it and should actually be a rather small part of it. It's rather more focused on exposing them to different kinds of things. So for example, the sounds of a plane overhead, or the sound of fireworks, or different types of people, different activities that people are doing, running, biking, walking, exposing them to all of these things and creating a neutral response for your puppy. That is what socialization is. And of course, I'll get into step by step how to do that. But before I get into that, I also wanted to talk about the socialization window. So if you have a puppy, this is super important. Now, of course, it's not super exact, like this starts on the 92nd day of your puppy's life and ends on the 150th day. It's not like that, but in general, it's thought to be around from when your puppy's 3 weeks to around 14, 15 weeks old. And this time is the most critical because that's the time when your puppy is really absorbing the environment at like the fastest rate. So you really want to focus your socialization in this time period. Now, if you missed the puppy socialization window because your dog's a rescue or because you didn't know about socialization until after they were 14 weeks, it's not the worst thing in the world. You can still focus on socialization as your puppy/dog gets older, but this period is like super critical. And if you socialize well and thoroughly in this period, you're really setting your dog up for success. Now let's go into what socialization actually looks like so you can replicate it in your life with your puppy. So socialization again is about safe and positive/neutral exposures to things like people, dogs, noises, and even things like surfaces and environment. One thing to know here about people and dogs also is that you definitely want to try your best to expose your puppy to different types of people and different types of dogs. So in the context of dogs, you don't want to only expose them to golden retrievers. You want to expose them to dogs as small as Chihuahuas and ideally as large as Great Danes. And again, in this sense, you don't have to actually have them interact. You just want your dog to see these types of dogs kind of in the distance and just kind of learn, okay, these dogs exist, I don't have to react. And same with people. You want to try to introduce your puppy to people of all different ages, genders, ethnicities, even like attire. I know a lot of dogs that are scared of people with headwear or people that have canes. You want to make sure you can, in the best of your ability, socialize them, again, expose them to different kinds of people. So how do you expose them, right? Like, do you just sit there and watch people? And essentially it's kind of yes. It really is just the process of letting them absorb their surroundings, but there's two main components. The first one is distance. You definitely want to let your puppy have enough distance to the point where they're not overwhelmed. So let's say today you want to focus on exposing your dog to different types of people on your local bike trail. You don't want to go to the bike trail and stand in the middle of the bike trail and let your dog be this close to the nearest bike. I mean, of course, that would be rude in any context, but even in the case of socialization, that's really not what you want to be doing. What you want to be doing is, for example, you could find a bike trail and then find a bench that's like 6 feet off the trail that you can onlook the bikes. You can sit there with your puppy in your lap, on the ground, doesn't matter, on the bench, and ideally have them in like a sitting or laying down position, just again kind of to trigger that relaxed response, and literally just let them watch the bikes go by. Now, if your puppy is an excited puppy, let's say, or maybe he is a little bit overwhelmed already, then you know you want to create more distance. So this could look like if your dog seems to find it hard to relax or is wanting to chase the bikes, you're probably too close. So create some more distance, find a spot even further to where your dog can sit or lay down or just be calm. Once you find that spot, again, just let them look at the bikes. Every few seconds, minutes, whatever, you can give them a treat. And that's about creating the positive experiences. Basically, you're teaching your dog when they see a bike, it's actually a positive experience because mom or dad is going to give me a treat. Another thing you could do and should do actually is, especially after maybe the first session, right? First session, let them really take things in. Don't expect much from them. But from the second session, what you could also do is every, 3 minutes, you can have your dog look at you, teach them command for making eye contact with you. Encourage that. For me, that word is focus. So I could say focus. Once I get that eye contact, give them a treat. Practice these super easy commands in these environments where they're being exposed to all different kinds of things. And this is because you want them to learn that the bikers, or in other cases, dogs, people, sounds, whatever. First of all, they're just in the environment. They don't have to engage with every single one. And second of all, you're teaching your dog to listen to you around distractions, which is obviously great in all around the board. Now, you really, really, really want to focus on the positive aspect of this. So again, no flooding or overwhelming them with a ton of stimuli and expecting them to, be socialized in that way. And you really want to go at the puppy's pace. So if the dog, or if your puppy's like so far away from the trigger that they're not even realizing that they're there, yeah, you can move a little bit closer. But the whole point is to move slowly. And also, it's really kind of impossible to do socialization wrong as long as you're going super slow. So there is such thing as going too fast, right? So if you go way too close to the bike too soon to the point where your puppy looks overwhelmed, that's wrong socialization. But if you're going so slow that like you're not even sure if your puppy's noticing the bikes, but each time you're going an inch closer to the stimuli, you're not doing it wrong. You're just going maybe a little bit slower than the puppy could, but that's never a bad thing. Now, as you go about socializing your puppy to all these different things, and again, you want to focus on variety for sure, because it's not like people are the only things they're going to encounter in life. It's also going to be sounds and environments and dogs and all that kind of stuff. You can very gradually and progressively make it harder. Again, going back to the bike example, if on a Monday you're sitting 20 feet away from the bike path and you're doing the whole thing of him getting your puppy getting a treat every few minutes, practicing some easy commands, your puppy is taking in the environment while sitting and looks pretty calm, then maybe on the Tuesday, the day after, you can be 19 feet away from the bike path. On Wednesday, you could be 18 feet away from the bike path, and really gradually making it a little bit more difficult. Now, some other examples of socialization besides a bike path socialization could be, for example, a puppy class. I love puppy class because usually with puppy classes, there's a portion where the puppy can play with other dogs. Again, this is a super important part of socialization, to teach your dog to play appropriately with other dogs. But puppy school is also awesome because the majority of the class is actually teaching the puppy to listen around other dogs. This is a skill I find so many dogs lack. Even my dog had a hard time grasping this because he was a COVID puppy, so we didn't have puppy classes at that time. And puppy classes go such a long way to teaching your dog that yes, he can play with other puppies and dogs in appropriate contexts, but unless it's that specific play time, they have to listen to you even if his friends are all around, or even if there's potential friends all around. So I really recommend puppy school for great socialization. Another socialization method I love is going outside of a dog park. So instead of going into the dog park, and by the way, please do not go inside the dog park with a puppy. I'll get to that in a bit. You can go outside of a dog park and do the same thing I said with the bike path of just kind of sitting there and watching from outside of a dog park. And lastly, another example could be should be going to places like I think Home Depot allows dogs, but also Petco allows dogs. So stores that allow dogs, and also like cafes that allow dogs. Where I grew up in Westchester, there was a place in Terrytown called Coffee Labs. We took my dog there all the time, and it's such a great socialization experience for a puppy, but also a dog, because it teaches them to kind of be calm in these busy areas. So there's people all around, there's dogs on leashes there's people making coffee, all these different sounds. It's a great socialization place, especially for a puppy who's just getting started before they have become reactive, if that's gonna happen. So it's great to go to those cafes, bring your puppy and teach them, to relax, give them some treats every few seconds, and expose them, to the world. Another two socialization things that you should really work on is things like surfaces and touch. So with surfaces, you want to expose your dog to so many different surfaces so that in the future, if they encounter an unfamiliar surface, they won't get scared. So the first thing you could do is, for example, over a graded surface, and also sand surface and concrete and grass and dirt and all these different surfaces, encourage your dog to walk over them and let them go at their own pace as usual. And with a touch, you want to expose your dog to being touched on the paws, getting groomed, getting their teeth brushed while they're young, so that when they're older, they're not so scared and rebellious towards being groomed / observed at the vet. So as a young puppy, what you can do is every single day for just like literally 30 seconds, touch their paws with your hands, brush their fur with your nails very lightly, and then brush their teeth with like a puppy toothbrush. Just getting them used to these kind of things is so instrumental in their whole life, not being so against being touched by things like the vet and the groomer, but also you. One thing I want to address is okay, so is socialization the process of saying hi to people and dogs, or is it not? Because the word socialization, sounds like it should just be your dog saying hi to other dogs and people, which is a very common misconception. As I said earlier, it's not necessarily not that. That is a very important part of that. But one big mistake you want to avoid is focusing on that and not focusing on the practice of listening around dogs and people and not engaging with them, because that's what's really difficult for dogs. A puppy is going to be happy to say hi to people, is going to be happy to say hi to dogs pretty much 99% of the time. So of course you can have play dates with dogs that you trust. Again, unfamiliar dogs, I don't trust them after my dog being attacked multiple times. So find a dog you trust, have play dates, invite different people over either to your house or in the park. You can let random people say hi to your dog, but you really want to avoid your dog getting used to seeing someone or seeing a dog and expecting to say hello to them. You want to have those specific circumstances be controlled. And the rule of thumb should be, when I'm walking on a leash with my mom or dad, I don't say hi to other dogs or other people. Again, the reason for this is because if your dog begins to expect to be able to greet every single dog you walk by or every single person you walk by, it oftentimes leads to reactivity, because as they get older, if you say, no, we're not saying hi to that dog, or no, you can't say hi to that person, your dog might start expressing himself by lunging on the leash or barking because he wants to say hi to those dogs or those people. So you want the norm to be able to walk calmly by anyone and anything without having a big reaction. And in appropriate context, when you tell him it's appropriate or show him that it's appropriate, then he can greet people, greet dogs. Now I want to go over what not to do when socializing a puppy. The first thing is, do not overwhelm your dog / force an interaction or an exposure. So again, kind of going back to what I said earlier with going on a busy path. You don't want to stand in the middle of the path and overwhelm your puppy. Another thing is, if there's a big dog that, maybe you're familiar with and they're friendly, but your puppy looks scared, you don't want to force them to interact, especially pull them on a leash towards this big dog. You want to let your puppy do things on their own time. The reason for this is because if you create accidentally a negative association for your puppy with certain stimuli like dogs or people or bikes or whatever, that especially can lead to trauma, and that trauma could lead to reactivity, and you can hurt your dog's confidence as they're in their prime socialization window, which will translate unfortunately into adulthood a lot of the time. Another thing you want to avoid, and I hinted at this a little bit earlier, is dog parks. Now, I must say, when I was younger, I loved dog parks because the idea of it is so great, right? Like, my dog gets to make so many friends. I just go to the dog park and there's like 20 friends there for him to play with. Even if it's only like 2 friends, he gets to run around. Unfortunately, with dog parks, the reality of it is that, first of all, a lot of dogs there are not, very, let's say, friendly. Even if they seem friendly to 99% of dogs, that 1% of the time, if they decide to lash out, and a lot of owners don't see those warning signs a dog is giving, it could lead to your dog getting very, very hurt from just one accident or one incident. Another reason to avoid dog parks also, though, with a puppy is because even if another stranger's dog doesn't necessarily attack or hurt your puppy, they could be just like terrible examples of how to properly interact with another dog. When I used to go to the dog park, there were so many dogs that just didn't have appropriate communication style with other dogs, to the point where they would like run up to another dog and go face to face, like super close like this. That does not translate well to other dogs. And a lot of times, if a dog doesn't have the appropriate communication style with other dogs, they can get attacked themselves. And I wouldn't want my puppy to be around those kind of dogs. I want to set my puppy up for success. That's why I suggest controlled play dates with dogs that you're already familiar with. There are so many dogs that are appropriate to play with a puppy. They're just gentle. They have proper, canine communication style with other dogs. Just set play dates up with those kind of dogs to kind of serve as a good example and teach your puppy how to play properly. But also dog parks, last point on dog parks, are not great because a lot of times, again, they can also lead to reactivity. The reason being that if your dog only associates other dogs with like this high intensity play in the dog park, it can often lead to leash reactivity, where when you're on a walk with your dog on a leash, they want to say hi to every dog, kind of like what I was saying earlier. And if they can't say hi, they react, lunge, bark, whatever. And dog parks often make that problem a lot worse. So my advice, always stay away from the dog park. If you have a dog park near your house and that's like the only place your dog can run free, just try to go like very early in the morning or at weird times where maybe there's only 1 or 2 other dogs, and you can decide for yourself if those dogs are trustworthy, I guess. Or you can find a time when there's no other dogs. Also, there's a company called Sniff Spot in the US where you can rent other people's yards for like $5 or $10 an hour. That's also a great alternative, and you can have play dates there with, again, dogs that you know. Last do not for puppy socialization is punishment and anything that creates fear for your dog. So even things like yelling. This comes with like across the board for all dogs, to be honest, not just puppies, but especially puppies that are in the process of socialization. You never want to create an experience that makes them either lose confidence or feel fearful. The reason being that, again, like I said earlier, since this is their socialization window, this is when they're kind of learning like, okay, what behavior is appropriate, what is in this world, how should I feel about things, blah, blah, blah. And if you take that really, really like fragile and impactful time in their life and you do things like yelling at them or snapping on the leash to teach them not to pull, a lot of times you can hurt their confidence a lot, and the socialization ends up kind of like not working at all, and they still end up being fearful, reactive as they get older. Now, I'm a strong believer of positive reinforcement dog training, so I would say never use those kind of aversive methods on a dog. I don't care if they're 2 months old or 12 years old, but especially with a puppy, it's like, please do not use aversive methods. Now, one important thing to note here is that socialization is an ongoing thing. Again, there is the socialization window when a dog is young, 3 to 14/15 weeks. However, that doesn't mean that as soon as your dog hits, let's say 14 weeks, that you can stop exposing them to the world and you just, forget about socialization. It's definitely an ongoing thing, but the difference is that you can kind of wane off of it as you get older, and also treat exposures as more of like a daily little thing as your dog gets older, rather than something you like put 100% of your attention into. So for example, as a puppy, let's say, going back to that example, you go to the park to expose your puppy to all different kinds of exposures. When they're, let's say, 4 weeks old, you go just for that purpose of socializing your dog. You bring the treats, you're giving your dog 100% of attention. But maybe once they're, let's say 1, 2 years old and you're doing continuing socialization, you can just bring your dog to the park with you when you're going anyway with like a friend or something for a picnic. And yeah, you can pack some dog treats to give, every so often while you're in the park. But by then you don't have to give your dog 100% attention to, expose very, very diligently to all different kinds of people and dogs. You can, especially if your dog has become reactive by that point, but most of the time you can kind of do it in passing. So what if your dog is still not vaccinated and can't go outside yet and interacts with other dogs? So this is a common question because a lot of times at 3 weeks old, a dog is not ready to go out and walk on the ground and interact with a bunch of different things. And that's fine because socialization can still be done either at home, or you can also bring your dog outside sometimes in like a stroller, or you can carry them. Definitely ask your vet. I forget like which vaccines allow your dog to like touch the ground and which allow them to interact with dogs and stuff. But anyways, whatever your vet says it's safe, you can still do it with those limitations. So for example, if your dog is in a stroller, you can still take them to somewhere where they can see other people and give them a few treats while they observe. You can still expose your dog to sounds while you're at home through like YouTube. You could put on firework videos and expose them, and you could do all these different things. One quick note there, since I didn't mention this earlier, if you're exposing your dog to sounds like firework videos, definitely start at a very low volume to avoid, again, flooding them. So to recap, socialization is about safe and positive/neutral exposure. It's not just about quantity, showing them as many things as possible. It's about controlling the exposures and making sure that your puppy grows up to be confident and not fearful. If you have a puppy in the prime socialization window, get outside, start socializing right now. But even if you miss the prime window, definitely start socializing or continue socializing, whichever stage you're at, and never stop socializing. Don't forget to like and subscribe, especially if you like the puppy throughout this video, Naya, and I'll see you next time. Bye.